and I was coming and I was slamming the brake. There's no way I could stop in time. So then hit the gas. I was able to just get in between maybe this much space. My wife, my daughter, my mother, and my mother's husband in the car. I thought, okay, if this had been the end, my gravestone would have read, "Here lies Thomas, the guy who said he wanted to go to Phuket again, but he never did."
Welcome to Fruiting Body Podcast with your host, Brendan. And today we have an absolute legend of a guest. It is Thomas Engberts. He is the injury fixer. You got a broken shoulder, you got a sore knee. You might just need some, basic rehabilitation stuff. You can find him down in Rehab. And today he's going to really dive deep into what he's doing on the island and especially who he's working with. You're going to find out. Without further ado, let's get this podcast started. Oh, we always forget. Don't forget to like, subscribe. It helps us out in the algorithm. And we also heard that if you share this content, it's really going to boost us up. So if you love the content, hey, it's for free. Help us out a bit. Let's get it going. And without further ado, Thomas Engberts. Got it? So you had me stuttering on that one. This is the injury fixer. So let's kick it over to Thomas. Right away, how we do it on the Fruiting Body. Tell us your journey. Tell us your story. What'd you do from Phuket and what brought you here?
So I came here the first time in 2007 to visit a friend of mine that I knew from high school. He'd been here a couple times and ended up living here. Phuket, to be honest, Thailand was never even my radar. I'd already planned a holiday to France with some other guys, but he kept kind of nagging at me, or not nagging, but saying how awesome it is here and I would love it, blah, blah, blah. And I was at my last year studying physical therapy at the time. And I thought, maybe I should just do it, once in a lifetime thing to take a trip that far. I'm from Holland. So I went 4 weeks, fell in love with Phuket, fell in love with a girl, and turned 4 weeks into 6 weeks. I had to go back to Holland. I did one more internship. 6 months later, came back again. And here we are, and 15 years later.
15 years later?
Yeah, 2007 was the first time.
Holy shit. It's been a long ass time then.
So I was so the first time 6 week holiday, then I came back here 6 months later. It was about 4 or 5 months, I think. And of course I ran out of money, because there was just like holiday, just enjoying the life, training and barbecuing and having a couple of beers and all that. Then I went back to Holland again to graduate, work a little bit there and just apply for jobs all over the place. And back then in Phuket was not nearly as developed as it is now, especially the whole fitness industry that's very big here now, obviously. Didn't really exist that. I remember you had Ravai Muay Thai, Simbui Muay Thai. Tiger was just a small little place with, I think, 1 or 2 rings and a couple of bungalows. And Ravai Gym was the only weights gym in the area back then.
So you were, when you were back in Holland, were you involved in this type line of work, like physiotherapy? Did you study that at school? Or?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So how did you even initially get into that? Like, let's go back maybe even further into your life. Like, what led you towards this type of career path?
Yeah, so I was never any good at sports as a kid. I was always kind of clumsy, skinny, weak, whatever. And then when I was, I think, 12 or 13 years old, I remember there was this guy in my class. He was like a couple of years older. I had to go back a grade. And he was pretty, he did some lifting. He was pretty strong. And I remember him showing his bicep to some girl. And the girl was like, so I was like, oh, man, I want to be like that. So then I started lifting first because my dad was actually a powerlifter. So we had some stuff in the ground, but as a kid in the house. But as a kid, I was never allowed in that room, because it's dangerous with the weights and everything.
I think just bring the mic because you'll be talking to me this way. Just bring it more because we had this problem with Frank. Yeah, we fucked up Frank's volume, so shout out to Frank Hickman at Bangtao Muay Thai. But yeah, that's good.
Better.
Perfect.
Yeah, okay. All right. Cool. So yeah, I started kind of sneaking in the weight room there, and I remember at first I was just using this wooden block to do bench presses with, and then one time my dad came in. It's like, oh, what are you doing? And then he started to show me some things, squats, deadlifts, bench presses, etc. And then so I started lifting, but still made really slow progress. Just don't have that body type that naturally builds a lot of muscle or strength quickly. So I started reading all these bodybuilding and fitness magazines that my dad had. And And then of course I thought like, okay, I'm going to be smart. I do exactly what these experts say, not what my dad told me, because my dad said, yeah, you just need to focus on the basics and everything. But, you know, like in the magazines, I could find exactly, you know, the 10 best ways to, you know, work this muscle or that muscle, whatever. Didn't work at all. Barely made any progress. Actually, I think when I was 17, 18, like a girl asked me, do you do any sports? I said, yeah, I've lift weights, you know, like I thought it would be obvious. But then she kind of started laughing, grabbed my arm and said, like, you need to do a lot more lifting. So that was a bit disappointing. But it just kind of made me only focus more. And then, you know, then at that time, also, you know, started to get online, of course. There was more and more information available, then I learned more and more. And then when it was time to, when I graduated high school, okay, what am I going to do? I'd read online about personal trainers and strength coaches, and that seemed really, really cool to me. But in Holland at the time, that wasn't really a thing. So there was no personal trainer or strength coach certification that you could do. So I thought, okay, what should I study? And then I think a friend of mine, actually the same guy that got me here to Phuket, I was training with him, and he'd gone to a physio, and the physio told him, like, to build muscle, you need to do 3 sets of 12 reps or whatever the number was. I don't even remember. And he took that as absolute gospel. You know, it's like, the physio said it and he knows the best, you know. So I thought like, that's interesting. I want to be that guy, you know. So then I decided to study physical therapy. At first, not with the intention of doing anything with injuries at all. I just wanted to know more about training, how to get bigger, stronger, faster, and all of that. But then in my 3rd or 4th year, one of my internships, then I discovered actually the most motivated people are people that are injured, and I kind of enjoyed working with them all of a sudden as well.
You're in your 3rd year university.
Yeah, exactly. So still in Holland at the time.
What were you studying at that time?
Physical therapy.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Yes, in Holland you got to pick pretty much straight away after high school. You got to pick, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that.
It's not like, I know a lot of friends, they would go into like kinesiology and things, but they actually have physical therapy programs.
Yep.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're studying this in your 3rd year, and your whole intention was this was the career path.
Yeah, but my intention was, okay, I want to do something with sports, athletes, strength and all of that, not the injuries. But then like I said, I kind of realized, like, actually it's kind of fun working with injured people as well. You can really build them up. So yeah, then when I graduated, like I said, then I was just looking for a job. I couldn't find any place in Phuket to really, you know, I couldn't make a living here doing what I do. Eventually got a job in Bangkok, later started my own place there. And then it was about 50-50 between injured people and, you know, training people to get stronger. I had a lot of high school kids that I worked with at the time. So I was in Bangkok for 6 years. Then I made the move back here finally, because Bangkok was never like the end destination for me. You know, like I didn't enjoy, it was good for business, but I didn't enjoy living there.
The lifestyle's a bit, you kind of, even when you leave your home country, you're still back in the city and you're still back in the grind.
Yeah, and I grew up in a small village, like maybe 2,000 people back in Holland. So I'm used to, you know, green, open space and fresh air and all of that. And obviously there's not much of that going on in Bangkok. But every year it's actually an interesting story. Every year there was some reason why I couldn't go. So at one point I had an employee, he worked for me. I thought, he can take care of the business. I can go to Phuket, maybe set something up there. I'll just work on the business, you know, on the marketing and everything from Phuket. But then he quit. He wanted to go back to England, so I had to, you know, step in myself again, do all of the work. And every year there was something. And in one year, I got into like an almost car accident where if it would have happened, that would have been the end of me
like and
my family. No, on the way, we were on holiday in Hua Hin.
Yeah.
I had my mother was visiting with her husband and my wife and daughter. So we're there, and I got sick actually that trip. And I think that's what saved me, because I was playing this game on the iPad because I was just lying in bed all day. You know, that game is called Subway Surf, I think. You know, where you run and you got to jump over things and duck things out of the way and whatever. Oh. Anyway, stupid game. But on the way back, we were driving. I don't know if you've ever been on that road between Hua and Bangkok. It's just one of these typical Thai roads, 3 lanes aside, and boring drive. So it was on the right lane, on the fast lane, going maybe 100, 120 kilometers an hour. Car in front of me, there's a U-turn lane. Car in front of me, he indicates he wants to make the U-turn. No big deal. Then last minute, the car on the left and in front of me, he decides he wants to make the U-turn too. But this other car was already there. So he basically, it was this kind of situation. I was coming and I was slamming the brake. There was no way I could stop in time. So then I hit the gas. I was able to just get in between, maybe this much space on either side. And I credit playing that little game for having my reflexes quick for saving my life. And if that was the end, that would have been it. Like definitely. And like I said, my wife, my daughter, my mother, and my mother's husband in the car. So after that, of course, it was a bit shaken up. Put the car on the side of the gas station. All the others went to get some food, and I just stayed in the car, closed my eyes, and I thought, like in my mind, I thought, okay, if this has been the end, my gravestone would have read, "Here lies Thomas, the guy who said he wanted to go to Phuket again, but he never did." And I thought, okay, I just got to do it. Like it's never going to be perfect time. So 6 months later, came here, and that's it.
Did you come down with a plan to continue that business over here, or how was that set up?
So I kind of first came here just on a holiday to kind of check things out, and I went back on Soi Thailand, which had just exploded. I mean, not to the level that it has now, but compared to the first time I was there.
The soy, like Chalong.
Exactly, yeah. So all of a sudden, you had Unit 27 there and all these other places. So all of a sudden, that was much more of an opportunity for me. But I also saw, because like I said, in Bangkok, it was about 50-50 between, strength and conditioning training and the injuries. But here I could see there was no way I could compete with guys like Tiger or Unit 27 and put my own gym. That just didn't make any sense. So I figured if you can't join them, if you can't beat them, join them. So then I kind of branded myself purely as the injury fixer and focused even more on that.
When you were starting, were you kind of like freelancing, working out of their gyms and running your own physio type of business?
Yeah, so for the first, in the beginning, I just had a little setup at my own house because I didn't have my company set up here, and getting work permit took a lot longer than expected. And actually back in Bangkok, my first year, two of my friends got arrested for not having a work permit. Spent the night in jail and all that. And I was just lucky I wasn't at the office at the time. It was the only reason why they didn't get me. So I was a little bit paranoid about all that, and so I didn't want to really market myself. So the first year and a half, I flew up and down to Bangkok every week. So I flew to Bangkok, worked for a couple of days, come back here until I got it kind of to a point where I felt confident. Okay, I've got enough of a base here to just be here only. So I worked at rent space at Unit 27 for a while. And later at Titan, and then COVID came, and it just didn't make any sense to rent any space anywhere anymore, of course. And then I went mostly online, which I was lucky because I already had a lot of online programs and had all the videos and all the content and everything in place, which I think a lot of people, trainers, they had to get started online and had to figure it all out. So I was lucky I had that base already.
Yeah, you were already there. Yeah.
So that's what saved me. Otherwise, I probably would have had to go back to Holland and back my parents or something like that. So
when COVID hit and now you're working online, are you you're working with clients? They're visiting you, or is everything still remote?
So I was doing before I was 90% local, 10% online. Then with COVID, it flipped around and it became 90% online, maybe 10% or even 5% local. And then last December, all of a sudden, start to pick up here again, and pretty much been busy since that time locally, and I'm actually enjoying working with real people again. Of course, online it's also real people, but it's just for what I do. Like with my online clients, I had them send me videos, and then but it's harder. Like if I'm right there next to you, I can tell you exactly. Okay, like tuck your elbow in a little bit more, or keep your shoulder down, or whatever. And with the injuries, that makes a big difference.
What's the big difference between, obviously I've been here 6 years, and I've had my injuries, and I've actually visited you as well, and fuck, it's painful, but it helps.
Sometimes.
It really helps. Now the difference between, let's say, the typical Thai physio spots where they're going to take the infrared, the gel and the sensor, they're just basically adding heat, and they're finding, where that pain spot is. But the physio side is not as in depth. What are you kind of offering that's like a little bit different than that?
Well, I think because I come from that training background, that's actually I study physical therapy. That's my official, title, I guess. But one reason why I start to call myself the injury fixer is because, like, even in the West, like a lot of physical therapists there, it's, some of them are good, but a lot of them are not, quite frankly. So I kind of wanted to, not be the physio. But but the difference, I think, because I come from that training background and I became quite nerdy about it, so I read a lot from. I don't know if you ever heard of Westside Barbell, Louis Simmons. He's like a powerlifting guy, and like those articles that they were talking about, okay, how to strengthen guys' backs and hamstrings so they can squat 1,000 pounds. I applied those same principles, and to help people, be able to squat at all, if they weren't able to, for example. So I learned a lot from kind of the Bruce Lee method. I always say, like, I steal from everybody, adopt what's useful, and reject what's useless. So, so yeah, I think a lot of normal physical therapists who, if they're not into training themselves, they don't really understand.
Yeah, it's kind of like the same methodology, no matter what injury you have. It's whether it's your knee or your shoulder or your back, they kind of give you the same advice, I find. And there's some good ones in Chalong for sure.
Oh yeah, and like all that stuff, like ultrasound, massage, chiropractic, and whatever. Like I use some of those things myself, like trigger point and whatever, and exercise. Like all these individual things, they can really help. But the problem is, like, it's usually not the entire puzzle. It's one piece of the puzzle. Sometimes you're lucky, if you just need, like, for example, if your back hurts and it's just one muscle that's weak, and you happen to stumble upon the one exercise that strengthens that muscle, that fixes your back pain. And usually people go around telling everybody, like, I just did this one exercise that fixed my back pain, you should do it too, or I did yoga and that fixed my back pain and that was it, or I got ultrasound and that did it. Like, it's always based on personal experience, the one thing that I did and that fixed me and that will fix you too. But a lot of times, what causes one person's back pain isn't what causes the next person's back pain, and usually it's three things. So that's why I always like to attack it from all the different angles. There's some tight spots usually. You need to loosen them up. You need there's some weak areas. You need to strengthen them up. And then the other big difference, I think, between me and a lot of others, I look at the whole thing. So, for example, if most physios and even orthopedic surgeons, etc., like, let's say you got knee pain, look just at the knee. Okay, what's going on with the knee? Is it meniscus? Is it ACL? Is it the ligament? Or is it tendonitis or whatever? And I kind of just look at that. But you also have to look at this is what I do. Okay, what's causing? Let's say you got like inflammation in the tendon. You can work directly on the inflammation. But what's causing it? It's kind of like a car that's out of alignment. If you get a car with one tire a little bit softer on one side and you keep the car in the garage, no big deal. A year later, the car is still the same car. If you just take it out to get the groceries once or twice a week, 500 meters down the street, probably a year later will still be fine too. But if you take it on the highway and you're going to drive it for many, many miles and fast, then something's going to wear down, right? Eventually. Then if you take it to the mechanic, if the mechanic only fixes the part, replaces the part that's worn down, but doesn't fix the alignment of the car, then and you're going to drive it again, it's going to happen over and over again.
Yeah, right? It has like a ripple effect.
So you get the same problem because you didn't take away what's causing it. So, for example, with the knee, a lot of times it's a tight ankle. So a lot of people, like, for example, you could have sprained your ankle when you were 12 years old playing football, and you're 12 years old, so you wake up the next morning and it doesn't hurt anymore. You go play football again. But often what happens is it doesn't fully recover, like the pain goes away, but you still got some stiffness.
And you start to favor it a bit.
Exactly.
Well.
So and again, when you're, under 25, that's rarely a problem. But then, 25, 30, 35, 40, whatever.
Yeah, I had that with I would have like this knee pain every so often, like once every 2 years, my left knee, I just couldn't squat. Not even body weight. And it would come out of nowhere. And basically what I ended up finding was my left quad after like 2 years later was like substantially smaller than my right. And then that started to lead to lower back pain.
Exactly.
And I went and saw another physio guy as well in Chalong at that point. And basically the physio he's like, just go in a pool and wiggle your left leg for months. Like, just build up, like, he's like, you literally have your hamstring is like, there's nothing there.
Yeah.
He's like, whatever you're doing. So if I was squatting, I was probably using like 80% on this leg.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you don't really notice it. And then it kind of, it snowballs and it goes from your knee to your back. And then eventually it somehow worked its way to my shoulder. And yeah, and you never really know where that pain was originally coming from until you kind of go through those sessions. But
Yeah, exactly.
Typically when you're working with high profile athletes as well. I saw Johnny Walker was down with you.
Yeah, I've worked with Johnny Walker, Mark Hunt, Taito Vasa, a couple of other UFC guys.
What do you usually see from let's say the MMA athletes? Is there something that you're seeing more often than others? Like in terms of on a specific injury, or is it all over the place?
No, it's like really they're just the same as us, but they're usually most of the pro guys. They're definitely genetically a little bit better than you and I, so they recover quicker. But they beat their bodies up a lot, So I found it because I used to work with a lot of Crossfitters back at Unit, but also a lot of fighters, and a big difference like a Crossfitter. Like as soon as something is a little bit off, like if they're doing a snatch and the right shoulder feels a little bit tighter than the left shoulder, they notice it and okay, this is a problem. I need to do something about it. Which was great for me because they're very aware.
Yeah, they're on top of it. They don't want to. They know that if they keep doing that for 2 weeks, it could lead to something else.
Well, and they notice it and if your right shoulder is a bit tighter than your left shoulder, you just can't do a snatch properly, right? Whereas with the fighters, first off, they're always beat up from sparring anyway, so their body is just hurting everywhere. But then also, if a fighter doesn't have a certain range of motion in a shoulder or whatever, he can adapt his game, so it doesn't have to be the exact perfect same movement, like he can just adjust the angle of a punch or a grappling move a little bit, and they don't usually realize it, but unconsciously they just do. So a lot of times the fighters, the recovery is really good as far as how quick they recover from exercise and everything. Of course, they're usually in great shape too, but their joints are often really messed up.
Do you think they don't want to find out? Like they're like, I don't want to find out I have a tear in my shoulder and I need surgery. I'm just going to keep doing this.
I've had sometimes fighters I got to fight in 2 weeks. Don't tell anyone that I'm coming to see you. Because I don't want the promotion to find out and then they're gonna cancel my fight or whatever.
So you're right on Bet365. Yeah, I'm joking. You got that inside info.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I remember one time this guy saw the Hulk, Aussie guy who used to be in the UFC, and that was the first time when I kind of realized this, because his coach had sent him to me. It's like, hey, Thomas, and so he said, I've just got this little niggle in my shoulder, hurts a little bit. That's okay, let's check it out. And ask him, okay, move your arms above your head and clap your hands. And he just did it like this. I said, there's no pain. I said, no, that's not over your head. This way. And then he was going, and I was in a lot of pain. I said, that's just not just a little niggle. There's something really wrong here, but he just avoided those movements, so
they don't want to, the fight gets called off. I mean, I'm sure even if the let's say it's the commissions in a specific state in the US, they find that out, they might not allow the fight.
Yeah,
they cancel the fight. Yeah. And then that's their livelihood. And a lot of people, if they're aware or not, these UFC fighters, unless you're a top 10, the pay's not great.
Yep.
And that fight might pay for the whole year for him. So
exactly.
They really can't miss it.
If the pay is great, same thing. It's all the same. And also for the same thing for the lower level guys that aren't even in the UFC yet. And they're making obviously even less money. So they're really, they gotta fight more. A lot of times they can't afford proper care. I've had guys that really, tore their pec years ago, but couldn't afford surgery. So then just just fighting with a torn pec and. Yeah.
I want to ask a couple things. One is going to be about the myths of people of chiropractors and what your thoughts are on that. But before that, being a physiotherapist, are all let's say specifically for knee injuries, is everything, can it be rehabilitated, or is there a certain point where you need to recommend surgery?
Sometimes, I'm not a fan of surgery in general. I think you should avoid it as long as you can. But in some cases, if you get hit by a car or you get kicked in the leg and something completely tears, like an ACL or a meniscus, especially, I've helped people rehab complete ACL tears without surgery. So that's definitely possible. But sometimes, if your meniscus is completely torn, then it just the bones just get stuck and it just can't move and gets locked.
And then it's kind of bone on bone at that point, right?
Yeah, it just, the meniscus is basically just a pillow of cartilage that's in between your lower leg and your upper leg. So if you get a tear in there, then the movement just cannot happen.
And it's quite small too. Like even a minor tear can cause some major pain.
Yeah,
like major issues.
Yeah, and it all depends on the person. Like everybody's built a little bit different. So some people have more open joints, some people have more closed joints. So two people can have the same tear, but it affects their movement and pain and everything completely different.
Yeah, I had our producer before, this lovely guy Hans, was a Brazilian guy, Talise. I don't know, maybe he's watching, probably not. These are so long, who the hell's going to watch them all? But he had a meniscus tear, and he actually had to go back to Brazil because obviously when you don't have insurance here, you're talking that surgery in Phuket would be about 200,000 plus baht.
Yeah.
So he's like, I can just go do it in Brazil. It makes sense. And he was hobbling around on crutches on and off for about 4 or 5 months before he could get the flight. Mm-hmm. And that was the main issue. Some days he would be great. Okay, it's gone. And then I'd be at the gym with him and he would just rotate wrong. Just
Yeah,
the
exactly.
whole
That's
thing would just
meniscus.
lock up. And he tried physio and it got to the point where it's like, even the doctors are like, you need to go fix it right away, because imagine you start that bone on bone and you're walking on it for 2 years. Like you could severely injure yourself for later in your life.
Make it worse. Yeah.
Have you seen these type of injuries before where, you've dealt with a client and then it's, hey, what the fuck did you do, buddy? That you should have been taking care of this maybe 2, 3 years, 5 years ago.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. And it's some things you just need to get surgery. You can't avoid it. But having said that, a lot of times people are also recommending surgery too early. Like for example, okay, your knee hurts. We should just do surgery. But again, they didn't look at why it hurts, and then you can do surgery. You can replace the part if you don't take away the reason why it happened in the first place, which again maybe a tight ankle, maybe a tight hip, or just weak muscles or whatever. Then even if you get to surgery, it's like it doesn't make the pain go away. Like one time I had a lady in Bangkok. She was a friend of a client of mine, and she was going to get back surgery. And her friend, my client, said please go see Thomas, because maybe he might be able. I don't think he needs surgery. He might be able to help you out. So I said, okay, sure, I can check her out. And my place in Bangkok was kind of out all the way in Chiang Vatra. And she lived downtown. So it was Friday night. She drove an hour and a half through traffic to get to my place. She came there with scans of her MRI, and it was just the disc was just hugely sticking out, enormous bulge. So I saw that and I was like, there's nothing I can do here. There's one of those cases where I thought you're gonna have to get surgery. But I kind of felt bad to send her away straight away because she traveled all this way. So I decided to check her out anyway. So first thing I do is I try and bend forward a bit, because I was thinking, okay, based on that scan, it should be super painful to bend forward. But she just bent forward and put her hands flat on the ground, and I was like, well, that's weird. That doesn't correlate with the scan. And then did some other tests that I was doing the assessment. I just found out she was really weak in her trunk muscles and glutes and all that. And because the movement assessment and the MRI didn't really correlate, so what you'd think would be very painful and what the surgery would have fixed based on the MRI, that's not what was preventing her movement. So her pain was just was different just because of the instability that she had. So we worked together for I think just 3 weeks. Just very basic exercises. Later was about I think 60, maybe 70 years old, and then she cancelled the surgery. Didn't need surgery anymore. So a lot of times, MRIs and everything are great. They tell you what's going on inside, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's what is the problem as well. So that's why again you got to look at it from different angles. Of course, if the movement assessment and the MRI tell the same story, then and it is a story that okay, this needs to be fixed with surgery, then yeah, you probably will have to do it. But just purely based on MRIs, that's not the only thing you should look at.
Do you offer advice on nutrition as well? Because I'm assuming like anything with inflammation, also if they're having knee issues, shoulder issues, it could also be further agitated due to bad diet.
Yes, definitely. The thing is, I have a hard enough time to get people to do like the exercises that I want them to do. If I also want to like try to make them change their diet, and that's obviously not what they came to me for. Like if you know if you're a nutritionist, somebody comes to you like, hey, I want to lose weight, I want to change my diet, please help. They'll hopefully do what the guy says. But it's, you know, it does make a difference, definitely. But yeah, in my opinion, that like for injuries, the mechanical problems are the same. Like only if, you know, if you got inflammation everywhere, like your knees hurt, your shoulders hurt, your back hurts, okay, that's a sign that there's some kind of systemic inflammation.
Eating too much shrimp, they got some gout in the system.
Yeah, for example, you know, could be, you know, or just like too many vegetable oils and not enough healthy fats and all that. But if it's, you know, if just your right shoulder is hurting, but everything else is fine, then that inflammation is not caused because you didn't take enough fish oil or anything like that. It's just because, you know, well, whatever the cause might be. And a big distinction to make also between, okay, what could be like, it is something that happens, you know, if you got a car accident, pretty clear, right? Or if you're doing jiu-jitsu and you get your shoulder twisted or whatever, you get a pretty clear moment, okay, this is when it happened. And, you know, doesn't matter how strong or how perfectly mobile everything is, you know, if it goes, it's going to go. Mm-hmm. But if it's something that kind of started a little bit slower, then there's usually some kind of mechanical cause, you know, like if it's from squatting or deadlifting, whatever, then, you know, there's usually something somewhere else that's not working properly that makes something else do more work than what it's really supposed to do. And that's when you get in trouble. So
speaking of that, and the jiu-jitsu in particular, which is probably the, you know, most realistic place where you're going to get injured. And I see, I see now you've gotten into it pretty heavy since COVID, and you've gotten your blue belt.
Yeah, that's right.
As an injury fixer, why are you jumping into the most injury possible sport in the planet?
Yeah, it's just fun. You know, it's just fun. But you're right. Like purely from a body health perspective, it's probably the worst sport you could do.
It's like, I'm like, maybe it's an experiment. How can I get injured in this and fix myself later?
It was just it's just fun.
Have you been injured? What typical injuries are you seeing in jiu-jitsu?
Well, I've definitely I haven't had like a serious injury from it myself, but definitely just always feeling beat up, my elbows and shoulders and things like that. One time I hurt my knee. I got like hyperextended in a roll, and then I was limping for a couple of weeks. Fortunately, never anything super serious. But you just get beat up, you know. And I think, especially when you started at a little bit of a later age, like, so I'm 36 now. I started 2.5, almost 3 years ago. So I was 33 when I started. So then as a white belt, you know, you just constantly get, you get submitted. You get your ass kicked all the time. You know, you get submitted all the time. And because, I mean, 33 is not that old, but it's not 16 anymore either. Then, you know, you get the beatings on the joints. And you see that with, like, you know, people who've been doing jiu-jitsu for a while. A lot of them are kind of walking around like a cripple half the time, you know. But then there's guys who start very early, and they get that initial constantly getting beat up phase, like when they're, you know, 14 or 16 or 18 or whatever, and then, you know, you don't get the
it's not as severe later.
Yeah, exactly, because you're just like your body just gets away with a lot more abuse when you're younger. And then when you're, you know, if you start at 16, and then by the time you're 25, you're probably a black belt, and, you know, you still get submitted, but not nearly as much as you know, somebody who's 25 or 30 and just get started.
Yeah, right? And the guys you're rolling with black belts, and you kind of all know it's more like a flow jiu-jitsu. You know how far you can push each other on that side. I was doing it for about a year and a half, and just I kept fucking up my shoulder, and I'm like, and then I couldn't go to the gym, and then I get fat, and I'm like, all right, I'm done.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
This is just, it was too much. It was too injury prone. Are you see a lot of like neck injuries, and especially with different discs? You get these type of clients that will come in with those type of injuries?
Yeah, definitely. Neck is in jiu-jitsu fairly
Is that
common
one
of
the more difficult areas to treat as let's say a physiotherapist?
Depends a bit on the injury. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. You know, like if it's just a muscular thing, that's fairly simple. But if like the neck, because it's a very dangerous area for your body to be hurt in, right? Like if let's say you hurt your wrist, well, the only thing that's going to be damaged is your wrist. Even if it's broken, it's just a wrist. But with the neck, if it goes really wrong there, then if stuff get pushed in your spinal cord, you get paralyzed, and then it's game over, right? And that's really one thing. Like muscles don't get tied for fun; they get tied for a reason, which is to protect you from further injury. So, and the worst thing that can happen to any joint in the body is that it goes completely out of place, because then you wouldn't be able to use that part of the body anymore. And especially with the spine, neck, or even lower back, if the bones or disc would get completely out of place, it would push into the nervous, the spinal cord, and you just get paralyzed. Nowadays you would survive, but if you're living a couple thousand years ago, then you become the victim of.
Well, even when a client would come in with a neck injury, like trying to assess them, you have to be much more delicate than someone. I mean, this is a rhetoric question, but on like a knee or a shoulder.
Well, not necessarily more. Like it's still, if there's something really bad going on, people know. That they're not gonna push through. But it's just there's many different factors. So then if it's a problem with the disc, for example, all the muscles also tense up, and you can just think, okay, it's just the muscles. So you loosen up the muscle, but then that problem with the disc is still there. The instability is still there. And the tiniest thing can make the nervous system kind of freak out and make everything contract again, and you're back at square one again.
Are you able to tell the difference when someone's injured between like inflammation? Maybe it could be a torn ACL, or let's say to the neck, or even the shoulder. If wait a minute, that's a pinched nerve. Like, can you explain like the difference between these injuries and like how you would go about fixing them? And it's more focused on something that I had, and it was on a pinched nerve, and it wasn't so much like inflammation. It was, how the fuck do I get this pinched nerve out? What I thought, and a little bit of background story on that, what I think happened, I think I was just bench pressing one day, and I read a lot about it. It could have not just been a pinched nerve, but even a ligament. Yeah. It might have got caught between there, like something so small that I couldn't even lift my arm up. When you're getting these clients, are you able to assess them? How would you address a pinched nerve versus like inflammation or something else?
Well, again, you got to look at what's pinching the nerve. So is it because some muscles are just way too tight and pulling the joint in a certain direction, and that's what's causing like the shoulders to come forward, for example, and it can cause a little bit of entrapment on the nerve. Well, then you got to loosen up those muscles that pull it in that bad position, and usually also strengthen the muscles that kind of reverse it and pull it back in a normal position, so everything is mechanically in line and everything can go freely. So yeah, like, and usually like to figure out if there's something neural going on, usually there's like radiating pain and stuff like that.
But sometimes I was reading online, because this wasn't for 8 months. This has been fixed for 2 years now, but even online, some doctors were saying surgery, and I really questioned that. They were saying like, well, if you want to really fix that pinched nerve, you can do a quick surgery, and they can actually go there and like get it out. Is that possible? Or is that like
the one thing is with looking stuff up online, it's like with anything, like with joint and muscle injuries, or I've got a little stomach pain, and before you know it, you get the worst disease known to man, right? And you're getting all kinds of things in your head. So that's definitely the same thing. If you look up, okay, my shoulder's hurting in this and that spot, and then you can kind of get caught in that rabbit hole of terrible things. So it all depends, but try for the simplest solution first, and then if that doesn't work, try maybe something else. If that doesn't work, and then because like surgery you can't undo, right? So and surgery in itself is kind of a trauma on the body. So well, again, sometimes it's necessary, but it is a trauma, and you need to recover. And I've seen people like a year or 2 years after shoulder surgery where it's maybe worse than it was before the shoulder surgery.
And that's because they're favoring it after the surgery.
Well, like maybe the surgery was not necessary, or like again they're cutting around, and the shoulder is a very complicated joint. Like whereas knee is a very simple joint. There's just a couple of ligaments, and it bends and extends only, and that's pretty much it. So knee surgeries are very simple and also relatively easy to recover from most of the time. But with the shoulder, because it's a ball and socket joint, you know, and there's a lot more different muscles involved and everything. And again, like I said, like muscles that don't get tired for fun, they get tired out of protection. When you get surgery, sometimes they can kind of freak out your nervous system, and it's thinking, okay, there's some problems here. We need to tense stuff up to protect it and keep it safe. But then you can get more problems from that protection, because then those muscles stay tight the whole time. Lack of blood flow in those muscles, and they get irritated, they get painful. Then you end up using other muscles more, and you kind of get this snowball effect from it.
It's that's I've always tried to
answers your
question.
It
does, and I understand in that sense. Like this type of podcast, everyone's different. If you're having a consultation, like even for yourself, when someone comes in for a consultation, you don't really know what's going. You have to go through a process to figure out what the hell's wrong with them first. Yeah. It's not, it's not, one thing fits all type of mentality.
And usually I kind of have an idea. Yeah. It's just somebody's like when they fill out a form on my website, like this and this, just based on, okay, how long it's been hurting and when it's hurting, you can already have an idea. But then, you gotta, because a lot of times people, if I'm just at a restaurant, for example, or in a bar even, and then sometimes people come up to me like, hey Thomas, I know you're not working, but and then comes like, my elbow hurts, what should I do? And it's like, well,
I can't tell you right now.
That's it's a simple with a complicated
I'm sure you've
answer.
had a few beers with a few guys at the bar, and maybe, all right, come over here. Let me take a look at you. I remember now, I was a part of your newsletter because I was a client and came in. Sorry, I can't remember because again, this is 2 years ago. Yeah. You had a specific kind of routine, magic, or what was
it's all magic? No,
the name.
Probably you think about a Superhuman 6.
That's it. Sorry, Superhuman 6, and you're really focused on using like elastic bands and strengthening the shoulder blades and the scapula, and also you're a big advocate of like tennis balls or hard balls. This routine, this process. How did you come up with that? How did that come together?
Yeah, and by the way, the elastic bands is just a tool. There's nothing magic about the bands. You got to work the muscles a certain way. The reason why for that I chose the elastic bands, because it's just, you don't need to go to a gym. Everybody can do it at home. And bands are really useful, but there's nothing magic about them. Just like there's nothing magic about kettlebells or barbells or machines, whatever.
You can throw an elastic band in your suitcase and you're good to go.
Yeah, or even you can work the wrong muscles with an elastic band and get the opposite effect of what you want to achieve. So nothing magic about the bands. Same thing with the tennis ball. Use that to. That's probably what I had you do as well.
Yeah.
Like on those painful spots on the muscles, and then using it. It's just the same as me digging in there with my thumb, or a foam roller is another tool, or the massage gun or whatever. And actually, I like to use the barbell a lot these days. Like especially for big muscles, like on the back and the legs and everything. Nothing beats the bar because it doesn't get tired. Like if I find a spot on your leg or on your back with my thumb, I can find a spot, but I'm human. After about 30 seconds or so, it starts to get tired and I have to change position a little bit. But I can keep that bar on there with a lot of weight for a long time. Hurts like hell, but it's really probably the most effective way to loosen up a tight muscle, especially for bigger guys.
Yeah, I found the elastic bands were really helping to strengthen my scapula. And you had quite, basics, like just even on a hanging bar, and I was using my scapula as well. And that technique, is that something that took you a while to create, or is that something you've kind of the Superhuman 6 in itself, I was a while ago, I was working with a friend of mine, Mark Joyner, and he was helping me with my marketing and all that. He's like genius at that. And he said, like, what if you could come up with some kind of something simple that, people can do, and just kind of, it could be the eye catcher or whatever. And then, so these basically, it's 6 exercises, and it's pretty much what I make everybody do before every single workout, whether, it's a high-level athlete like Johnny Walker, or just an accountant who sits at a computer all day. So the first exercise are actually planks, but I call them super planks, where you do it just for 10 seconds, but you squeeze your abs and your glutes really hard, and that creates a lot of stability in the spine. On the front,
on the side and also on the back. So you're creating, like, you're working it from all the different angles. Then the fourth is for your glutes. Just with the band around your knees, you push your knees out, sitting on the low step, gets the glutes firing. And the last two are for the upper back and for the rotator cuff. Mm-hmm. And those muscles, I call them the bulletproof muscles. And those are basically the ones that keep you upright and keep your joints healthy. I mean, of course, there's others too, but those are really the main ones. And basically, I kind of divide the muscles of your body. Like, you get two kinds of muscles. I call them bulletproof muscles and baby muscles. The baby muscles you already had when you were a baby, and those are all the muscles that kind of pull you in a fetal position, because you've been for 9 months, you've been in that position, right? And those muscles, they're all pretty strong, even as a baby. If you want proof, find yourself a baby, put your finger in the sand, and they'll grip it automatically straight away. Same thing, it's the hip flexors, chest, lats, forearms, biceps, all the muscles that kind of curl you into this fetal position. Now the bulletproof muscles, you have them already as a baby, but the connection between your brain and the muscles isn't really developed yet. That comes with the months and the years as you grow up, when you start to crawl and then walk and everything. So those are mainly your glutes, hamstrings, lower back, abs, upper back, and rear delts, all of the muscles that get you out of this kind of posture into more of an upright posture. A little hard to do on the couch here, but you know what I mean. Yeah. So they come, with the years as you get older, and it's literally the difference between a helpless infant who can, cannot even turn himself around, or a kid who can run, who can climb, who can jump, and do whatever he or she wants to do. And those bulletproof muscles, they're the last to come, they're the first to go away. If you look at old people, they kind of, it's those bulletproof muscles that get weak, and that's kind of what causes them to kind of bend forward and kind of grow back towards that fetal bend over position more and more. So age makes those muscles atrophy and get weak, but also stress. And that could be stress from training a lot, just physical stress, but it can also be mental stress from work, from your girlfriend yelling at you, or from, worry about money, or it doesn't matter, anything that stresses you out. Typically what happens is those baby muscles, they tend to tense up and get tighter, and the bulletproof muscles tend to kind of shut down, and or at least the signal from the brain to those muscles shut down, and they get weaker. Sometimes they can get tight as well, but they almost always also get weak. So with the Superhuman 6, it's basically just 6 simple exercises that kind of, switches those muscles on again, just improves the connection between your brain and those muscles. And that causes, actually, without doing any stretching, you can improve your flexibility, because, like I said earlier, muscles don't get tight for fun. They get tight out of protection to prevent your joints from dislocating. When you kind of reactivate those bulletproof muscles, you create more stability. Then that creates a sense of safety for your nervous system, for your joints, and then it becomes safe to let go of some of that excessive tension that you might have had in your hamstrings, in your neck, in your lower back, or wherever. So yeah, superhuman6.com. They can get them there, and it's I kept it as simple as possible.
I used it. I highly recommended it. It did help a lot, especially with my shoulder, which then I had a problem with my knee, and I just I kept consistent at it, and it allowed me to at least get back into the gym, and I felt great after it. And it's something so simple that, even when you're doing it, you don't realize, like, okay, what the hell is this? It's so basic that you don't think it's going to do anything, but it's those little things that, honestly, like, I felt amazing about. I think it only took maybe a month or so, and then I was ready to go again. Yeah,
and in general, like, also just people who train in the gym, like, if your body's perfectly balanced, you want about a 1-to-1 ratio of all different muscles, right? So, the typical bodybuilding program, you got just as many sets for chest as you have for back, and that's kind of equally balanced, which is great if you're already balanced. But if you're a fighter, or if you sit behind a computer all day and stuff tenses up, then you really want you want to do a lot more work for those bulletproof muscles, which again, hamstrings, glutes, lower back, abs, and obliques also, upper back. So lots of rowing is good, and to kind of keep the balance in your body. And if I had to say one reason why people get injured, is baby muscles get too tight, bulletproof muscles get too weak. That's 9.5 out of 10 times. That's the case.
You get a lot of people they kind of commute on the island. Probably people like yourself and me, not so much. We all stay in our bubbles. How often do you come up here?
Not very often.
Not very often. But I would say, especially in this area, you get a lot of English teachers that they don't want to live in Cat2, and that's where the job is. So they drive a lot to work. Do you think from driving the scooter, not a motorbike, let's say at least an hour a day, and your shoulders are always forward?
Yeah, anything.
Does this cause like some serious issues? Like that's what I don't know, maybe it was you told me or someone told me. I was driving at one point quite a bit, and that's the thing they asked. They said, when you drive the motorbike, where are your shoulders? And like now it kind of sticks in my brain, except for, you know, when you naturally want to be forward on the motorbike. Have you ever tried to just sit up like that? You just feel like a bit of a tool.
Well, so there's one exercise that I like to do. It's called a chair deadlift, which is basically just the bottom part of a deadlift, but you keep your butt on the chair. Maybe I can kind of show you here.
Let's see if we that's a good thing about. Okay, so I'll for all the listeners out there, so I'll dictate what he's doing.
Basically, you have the bar here. You're sitting on the bench, kind of like this height.
Yeah.
You grab the bar, and then you just stand up and just pull up to here.
Okay.
So it's just
so while staying seated.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So it's just the lower back that's working, and it works the whole back from from the sacrum all the way to the back of the head here. And when you do that exercise, and then next day if I'm driving on the bike, I just automatically like sit up straight, and I just okay, this is easy now. Whereas normally you just kind of like relaxed and bend forward like this.
It's more comfortable, I find, just to be lazy on the bike. It seems a bit strange.
But it's like when you do that exercise, it's like you got a metal rod behind your spine that just keeps it up automatically. You don't have to think about standing upright. But I mean, any kind of sitting, whether it's on a motorbike or in an office or even like just now, like we're not sitting here perfectly upright like this. Nobody does, right? So and then what does everybody do? Work on the computer. Even if you're not working on the computer, everybody's on the phone like this. So you're constantly in kind of a bent forward position, which again, like chest, lats, hip flexors, they get tight. So those are really the three main muscles that most people should.
Would you recommend
loosen up
when people are working a desk job?
Yep.
A desk job that sitting on like not like a yoga ball, or even standing up and working while standing.
You can slouch on a yoga ball too. So there's nothing like the idea behind this. Okay, you have to stabilize and everything, but at least for myself, when I sit on there, initially, okay, it's nice, but then you get in the exact same position as you would on a normal chair. Standing up is great, but the best I would say is to mix it up. So stand a bit, because if you're standing all day long, that get pressure on your feet and your knees and all that. That's maybe also not the best idea. But if you can alternate between sitting a bit, standing a bit. So after about 20 minutes of sitting in or of being in one position, your soft tissue starts to adapt to that position. So if a muscle is in a shortened position, then it starts to shorten up a little bit. If it's in a stretched position, it starts to release and relax a bit. So any position that you're in, even the perfect position, if you're perfectly sitting up straight, if you're in that position, even though it's officially maybe the best, but that can lead to its own
so
set of problems as well. Yeah, just moving around. Yeah.
Well, there's myths about atrophy, meaning like your muscle is decreasing. And I was reading, and people at the gym will say, like, if you don't go to the gym for 10 days, atrophy kicks in. Is there some science behind that or truth?
Probably yes. To be honest, I don't know the exact number of days or hours or whatever. But all cells of your body, including your muscle cells, are constantly breaking down and building back up, right? And if you don't stimulate, but it also depends a lot on what you do as well. So if you eat a lot, even if you don't train, then you might not break down. But if you if you go out drinking and you don't eat, then you start breaking down muscle really quickly, because it needs to use that muscle for energy. I used to be super paranoid about that. Like, if I don't eat every 2 to 3 hours, then I'm gonna lose muscle, and I would get I would get hangry, not from a physiological point, like because there was anything actually going on, but it was just in my head. I was just like, I've worked so hard for all this muscle. I'm going to lose it now. If I was on the road or whatever, I couldn't find something to eat, and then I would get really pissed off. And then actually, this is a book I got, The Renegade Diet. but Jason Frugian was basically, it's what now everybody knows is intermittent fasting. But in there he said like, actually you can fast for 16 hours and you won't really lose any muscle. And I was like, really? And I tried it, and actually I gained some muscle during that time, and it just freed up my mind. So, it's just like
because I remember
to not have to be constantly focused on getting protein and
maybe
all that.
15 years ago. I was in high school, so I would have been 2003, 2004.
Yeah.
And I remember the diet at that time was you had to eat 6 times a day.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Yeah, that's exactly what I did. Yeah.
I'm like, fuck that. I'm not doing that. But a lot of the guys at the gym when I was like 15, 16, they're eating 6 times a day. But I mean, I guess at that age, it doesn't matter. You can do that anyway.
Yeah, that can work. I mean, that's how every single bodybuilder in the world, like high level bodybuilders, that's how they do it, because they're, at that level of size where they really need to.
But they're packing. They have to. There's so many. They're probably eating 3,000-4,000 calories a day at least.
Yeah, at least, exactly. So it's a completely different. So what works for, a pro bodybuilder is not necessarily what you and me need to do. And also they're, obviously they're using chemical enhancement, let's say, so that also allows you to get away with eating a much higher quantity to food, and
they're
it's going to turn
high
into
metabolism. It's constantly burning as well. You're talking about, you also like this Bruce Lee mentality, so you're kind of dabbling in taking the best from everything.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like maybe negative connotation or mystic myths behind like chiropractors, and I'm sure you've heard of this plenty of times. Can you talk about like why do people try to push away this practice of chiropractors, and what are the benefits from an actual chiropractor?
Yeah, so I think just like everything else, there's good ones, there's bad ones, right? I mean, it's the bad ones that give the whole profession, I guess, a bad name. The main problem, I think, with chiropractors is to just focus on, getting the spine in the right alignment, and that's it. But then the problem is, if you don't strengthen the muscles that keep it there, it's going to happen over and over again, right? So I had it was actually one of my internships back in Holland, so it was 4 years ago. This girl, she came in with shin splints, and she was a bit overweight, and she was training. She wanted to be a police officer. She was going to the police academy. She had to do some fitness tests. She was running a lot, getting shin splints. And I did some tests with her and found out she couldn't hold a plank or a side plank for 10 seconds. So I was like, okay, that's, because you're weak in here, when you're running, you get a lot more impact. And, that's why you get the shin splint. So we, focused on that. And then one time she came in and says like, by the way, I want to thank you, I don't have to go to the chiropractor anymore. She hadn't even told me that she had back pain. And like, now I would have asked, but back then, it's just getting started. I just didn't even ask. But I don't need to go to the chiropractor anymore. Normally I go to the chiropractor every week because my back goes out of place, and our back doesn't go out of place anymore. So I think that's the thing. Like if you're constantly needing an adjustment, that's not. That's not how our ancestors evolved and everything. Like you got to look at all the pieces of the puzzle. Yeah. And it's just like, there's some physical therapists that say, okay, I just do exercise. It's just all about strengthening the muscles. Well, if a muscle is really tight or a joint is just really stiff and doesn't move, then, you can't really train those muscles properly. So I don't have anything against chiropractors, just against the ones that, say, okay, you just need to come back every single week for the next 265 weeks.
Well, maybe they don't want you strengthening those muscles.
Oh yeah, it's a business thing as well, of course.
Let's keep you in line.
But I think there's definitely some really good ones, and and it can help a lot in addition to some other things.
Yeah, it seems a lot of people, like you'll hear this online, they're kind of against that. But I've never really looked into it, so I'm like, instead of researching, I
think there's some chiropractors who kind of get really far into the kind of the woo-woo space, and they kind of claim that, okay, we just do this and it's going to fix everything, like even non-related things,
Well, like I was saying before, I saw someone for physio, without naming names, and they basically were like, I showed up and they wanted to align me, but with no follow-up physio process. Go home, do this, and this.
Yeah. And
basically, again, it was a shoulder problem, and they're just like, well, your body's out of line. I'm like, well, probably tell this to every single body that comes in here. I'm sure everybody's body's out of line. Let's be honest.
Pretty much, yeah.
Right? And then I laid on a table, and he kind of just took his 2 fingers and worked them all the way to my spine, and it was terrible. It was horrible. Like, is this woo-woo science? What is that? Have you heard of this?
Again, I wasn't there, so I don't know. You know, like, like it's very possible, you know, like if you got a problem with your hips or your spine, that could cause your shoulder to move a little different depending on the exercises that you, the training that you do and all that. So I would say I don't argue with the results. So if it works, keep doing it, you know. And if it doesn't work, then, you know, it doesn't work. And again, just because that didn't work for you, because that was not your cause of the problem, but for somebody else might have gone to that had that same treatment and might have fixed their shoulder pain. Who knows? You know.
What other type of like woo-woo science is out there? Maybe definitely it's in Copenhagen. We all know that. But like, are you talking more of like crystal healing on shoulders type of mumbo jumbo?
Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of stuff, right? But I think what chiropractors sometimes do get a bad name of is like that they're really, ascribing more benefits, and maybe they are there, like who knows, but to their manipulations than they really are, you know.
It's and I think for like the average person to go down that rabbit hole and do that research, especially now, like most people nowadays, everyone's quite busy, I find. Like, and so to even find that information, it's I'll just ask someone else. Let's see what they're about to say. Do you have any recommendations, or I guess types of exercises in the gym that you are, you know, highly against? Like, is that deadlifting? Is it a type of grip, or is there anything like you see someone in the gym, you're like, most likely you're gonna get injured doing that? Like, okay, so for example, for me is when I see people doing a lat pull down and they bring it behind the neck, I'm like, that just looks.
Well, so there's no such thing, in my opinion, as a good or bad exercise. Okay. It just depends on the person. So if your shoulder mobility and your upper back mobility is good, behind the neck lat pull down can be very useful. I do it myself sometime, you know. But if my shoulder is stiff, like for example from Jiu Jitsu and stuff like that, and I can't get that range of motion, then it can fuck your shoulder up. So same thing, deadlifts. Most people aren't ready for deadlifts. You know, that's the problem. Like if the mobility isn't there and the strength isn't there, then deadlifts can really be problematic. But it's not because the deadlift, is because of the person doing the deadlift. You know, so of course more injuries happen with deadlifts than with bicep curls, but there's also a lot more benefits that you can get from deadlifts than bicep curls, right? But I heard my own. One thing I will say: deadlifts off the floor, don't do more than 5 reps ever. Unless you're in CrossFit, if you're competing, then it becomes your sport, and then again it becomes like a lot of people are against CrossFit. They say it's stupid or whatever, but it's a sport, you know. It's just like rugby or jiu-jitsu. Like there's a certain risk with it, and when you compete in that sport, you just have to accept those risks. But in training, deadlifts from the floor, if you do more than 5 reps, usually because it's kind of a complicated technical movement, and then what will happen is some muscle gets tired first. Maybe it's your quadriceps, maybe it's your lower back, maybe it's your grip, and then your form starts to change a little bit. And that's when you get in trouble, and you start to move differently, and then you get you can mess up your back. It's actually the one time I didn't follow my own advice, I ended up really hurting my back. I was back in Bangkok. A new training partner, a guy came into my place, and it was kind of like it was just at the ground floor of my house. I just put in a squat rack and a bench and dumbbells and all that, and I was training people there. This guy, he just moved there, and he asked me like, can I do my workouts here? I was like, sorry, this is not a public gym, but we talked a little bit, and he was a strength coach as well. Huge guy, you know, his arms were the size of my legs. So I didn't have a training partner at the time, so I thought like, maybe we can train together. You know, it's good to have a training partner. So first workout. So now, what do you want to do? So let's do deadlifts. Okay, how many sets and reps? Let's do 6 to 8 and work up in weight, see what happens. Now, of course, I didn't want to be the pussy to say like, I don't want to do more than 5. You know, so 6 to 8 it was. I worked up. I think it was 140 kilos at one set for 7. It was okay. Another set, same weight. The first 5 were good. Number 6, it was like really like struggling, and of course, it's come on, one more. And then the last one, I was just. I don't know how I got it up. My back was rounded like a question mark and all that. Yeah. And then the whole day, that was in the morning, the whole day I just felt this annoying tightness in my muscles. You know, the feeling you just need a thumb in there to kind of get some blood flow back in there. But I had clients all day, so couldn't do anything. Then at night, my wife at the time asked her to to press in there first with the thumb, and which she did, and but I didn't feel anything. So I could use your elbow, and then she went in there with the elbow, and then I couldn't get off the floor anymore. I just like extreme spasms for all the way over my entire back. Somehow managed to get to the bed, and I was sitting on the side of the bed. If I went sideways, then I would like tremendous pain. If I tried to stand up, tremendous pain. Eventually, I managed to get out and get into some big rubber bands downstairs. I was lucky at the gym set up there and got some traction on the back, and that kind of like made all the pain disappear. And then my daughter, who was 3 at the time, she asked me like, "She wanted me to pick her up and carry her upstairs," which I did stupidly because of course then back when I was upstairs again, I was back to square one. Everything had tightened up, but that took me a long time to recover. Yeah, partly because I wasn't doing my own. I wasn't taking my own advice. So I just did what everybody tell everybody not to do, which is just rest and hope it will go away. So I was like in a lot of pain.
What was the problem actually in the end?
Well, so I never got an MRI, so I'm not 100% sure, but I think I probably a slightly bulging or ruptured disc. Didn't have any radiating, so it wasn't like a completely herniated disc. But but all again with lower back, same as with the neck. You get a problem in one place, but everything around it tenses up to protect it. But basically, for the first month, I was just neglecting it, and I was still training because if I warmed up, then I could. But then the rest of the day would be miserable again. And then one day I was training some clients, some middle-aged ladies, and I was trying to pick up a 3 kilo dumbbell, like really carefully with my back. I said, "Thomas, your back is still hurting. You gotta go to a hospital. Go to the doctor." I was like, "What's the doctor gonna tell me that I don't already know?" But I did think like, "Oh, maybe she's right. I should do something about this." And then that evening, I started to do some of my own exercises that even at that time I would give to clients with back pain. And next day I woke up, I was like, this actually feels a bit stronger. It feels a bit better already. This actually works. Who knew? So, but then still it took me about a year to really get back to full strength. But I did eventually. I had my best deadlift was 200 kilos. So which before the injury was 180. So I ended up getting stronger than before the injury. But still now, like this is the thing when you have an injury, like a bad injury, it almost always stays kind of the weak link in your body. So for me, if I don't do any mobility and stretching, and I don't do any warming up, or I don't lift, I just go straight into BJJ and don't sleep well, whatever. It's usually my back that kind of starts to become a problem.
You're giving away your secret.
Yeah. But then, fortunately, I know what to do now. So if I start to feel it coming, I attack it before it really becomes a big problem.
Well, I think there's a tournament this weekend in Bangkok.
Yeah, that's right.
Were you supposed to go, or?
I was going to go, but I got a staph infection, and so I haven't been able to train. And to be honest, like last couple of months, I've kind of been off and on a bit sick. That's why you remember we were going to do this earlier.
What did you have? COVID or no?
No, I did a COVID test. Was negative, but just kind of on and off, nothing serious. But I would get sick, bit of flu, whatever, and then feel better, back to training, and then sick again. So I think it's just maybe a bit of overtraining and a bit of other life stress. I'm single dad, so then sometimes
it's a lot of work.
Tired, and I think it was just kind of
especially overstress, not enough sleep, something like that, and then the immune system cannot catch up
exactly
as well.
We're
at an hour. Oh, okay.
Oh, wow.
We'll wrap it up in a second. I was going to ask, so the majority of your clients coming in now, you're down in the Chalong, Rawai area.
Rawai, yeah.
I met you at I think it was Titan.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not there anymore, by the way. I'm I've got a little setup at my own house in Rawai now.
And my question is more like, Thailand, it's going to become more of like a retirement place for like the boomers, let's call them. Do you see yourself pivoting to that, or are you going to continue to focus on professional athletes? Because I'm assuming you're going to start to see an older generation come here, and that's a completely different market as well.
Yeah. So actually, I noticed currently, especially these last 6 months, compared to before COVID, it was just tourists, right? Like people come on a training holiday, whether it's Muay Thai or CrossFit or whatever. But now there's a lot of digital nomads, like the e-commerce guys and the crypto guys, etc. So there's a lot of them. Most of them, I would say, between 30 and 45-ish. That's I would say the biggest age group that I'm seeing currently. And a lot of them are also like, they're not pro athletes, but they are into Jiu Jitsu or into CrossFit or whatever. So they want to be athletics, and that's my ideal client, to be frank. That's
easier to connect with as well.
Easier to connect with, and it's just also typically easier to get results for, because again, a body at 30 or 40 still, like, okay, it's not 16 anymore, but it still responds quicker than a body that's 65.
Well, you get more hours out of the 65-year-old.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so like I've worked with plenty of old people, even all the way up to in their 80s. But yeah, I enjoy because again, most of my stuff is performance based. Like, you know, okay, my knee hurts, but I want to do jiu-jitsu again, you know, or my back hurts, but I want to deadlift again. That's what I love to do, like really help people get back, or to become even stronger and better than before their injury. And usually the retired people, they're just like, I just want to be able to do day-to-day stuff, which of course that's important too, but it's just not as exciting for me to work with. However, you know, like, who knows? But like currently actually in Rawai, it's kind of funny that you see like an older demographic coming in. Like when I first came here in 2007, when there were a couple of young guys, like just like really hardcore Muay Thai guys, who, you know, just 20 years old, saved up €1,000 or dollars and tried to stay here for 6 months. That was like the one part of it, and the rest was like 50 plus. You know, just go to the bar and drink beers and have fun with the girls, and you know, and neither of them were really my target market. So that was the reason why I went to Bangkok
and especially I heard like even Rawai is it's completely changing as well, compared to before COVID.
I think a lot of people from other areas like kind of gravitated towards Rawai.
I guess a good example would be the Temple Jiu Jitsu.
Yeah, that's right.
This kind of encompasses of what's coming to life there, and those guys are all in that world as well.
Yeah,
which is great. I mean, I think that's kind of what Phuket needs as well. I think most of those guys, you know, they'd be based in Europe or Dubai or maybe Mexico, and I think a lot of people are starting to see the benefits of coming to Thailand. And there's visas coming, and I think digital nomad visas, and it's getting a bit easier to stay here now.
I've been talking about that for a long time, I think, but who knows? But that would be great.
Okay, definitely. Before we cut it off, we're just gonna kick back to this camera. And if you can just let everybody know like where they can find you in terms of like your social, your Instagram, and a final message to your fans.
Yeah. So my fans. So
this one right here.
Oh, that one there. Okay. Yeah. So Instagram, the Injury Fixer. My website's injury-fixer.com. And maybe I'll set up a page. This is not getting put out right away, right?
No, next Tuesday.
Okay, cool. So I'll make a special page, Injury Fixer / podcast. And then, because normally some of this, like that Superhuman 6 program, normally, like it's still cheap, it's only $9, but I'll give it away to them for free. If they go there, then you just, you can get it there. So
injury-fixer / podcast.
Yep.
And we'll throw that up there.
Sweet.
Awesome. Okay, I think that wraps it up for another episode. We're trying to keep them under an hour and a half to please the YouTube gods. Let's see how they do. Thanks a lot for joining us, and we're out.